Good afternoon, everyone. This is Lauren here with Health and Balance Physical Therapy, and I'm here today with Tori to talk a little bit about full spectrum doula work. So, Tori, welcome. Good afternoon.
Hi.
Well, thank you so much for giving up some of your precious time this afternoon. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, of course.
Would you mind just starting off telling us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. So my name is Tori Freund. My pronouns are she and they. I am a full spectrum doula living and working in Milwaukee. I'm also a certified childbirth educator. I'm training to be a midwife's assistant, and I'm also working with birthing advocacy doula trainings as a virtual assistant.
So it's definitely a lot going on, a lot on your plate in the realm of birth work and supporting birthing people.
Yeah, definitely.
Awesome. Well, what got you started as a doula and what brought you into the birth world?
Most people, like, when they talk about their doula journey, it usually started with their birth, and like their journey into parenthood. But I'm actually not really a parent yet. I wrote a paper about home birth for an English class my second year of college, and I discovered doulas while I was researching for that paper. Um, and even after the paper was done and everything was handed in, I still kept like coming back to that subject every time I was given free rein to do a research project, um, which eventually led me to attending a friend's birth just for fun, like not as a doula. And I was hooked ever since that night, which was actually about 2 years ago, last week, I think.
Wow. Yeah, definitely not something that most people do for fun.
I
People even like watch a video or don't necessarily even want to hear someone's birth story.
Yeah. Um, it was like the way she phrased it was like, "Do you want to come and hang out with me while I'm giving birth, basically, or like, do you want to come and see if this is something that you're actually really interested in?" And at first, I was really nervous because I was like, "Well, I don't know what to do," and she's like, "You don't need to do anything, just be there." And I was like, "Okay."
And then you went. Awesome. So, what made you interested in pursuing like a full spectrum doula role versus like only a birth doula or postpartum doula role?
Sure. So when I first started, I was just going to be a birth doula. I didn't know that full spectrum doulas were a thing until I think I was researching different organizations to get certified through when I came across the phrase, and so I looked into it a little bit further and realized that there's a ton of different kinds of doulas, and two, that full spectrum work really spoke to me on a personal level. Um, so for anybody that doesn't know what a full spectrum doula does, we bring the doula model of care, which is physical, emotional, educational, and informational support to a birthing person during pregnancy, their birth, and the postpartum period. And we support birthing people through all different outcomes and all different like modicums of um, pregnancy. So that can be like birth and postpartum, but it includes miscarriage, abortion, stillbirth, surrogacy, adoption, fertility. Um, Really, it's just kind of um, meeting people where they're at and seeing what they need and going from there.
Definitely. Yeah. And I know one thing too is I know that pregnancy, birth, it doesn't look the same for everybody. So
Definitely.
thinking of surrogacy or thinking of experiencing a miscarriage, things like that, where it's very much a part of your birth experience, but it doesn't fit inside this nice little box that so many of us see as pregnancy or so many of us see as birth.
Definitely. And I really think that everybody's experiences, all of their experiences are all significant and they're all interconnected in some way. They all have an influence on who you are as a person and how you parent and what you decide to do after something happens. So um, I really think that like all people in all of their humanity and all of their stories matter. So yeah.
Yeah, and what a beautiful way just to support anyone along that journey, no matter what step in their journey they're in.
Yeah, definitely.
So, could you tell us just a little bit more about what someone might expect working with you as a full spectrum doula in any one of the many ways that you could support them?
Definitely. So like specifically, I guess kind of depends on like how people come to me.
Mhm.
It depends on what kind of support they're looking for. But in a general sense, I don't have a one size fits all approach to anything. I have general ways that I want to go about things. It just kind of depends um, what it is exactly that somebody needs when they contact me. Um, but you will have somebody who is there to walk alongside you and support you and help you figure out decisions. I don't make decisions for people. I don't pressure anybody in any one direction when they're trying to make really really difficult decisions. And I'm constantly learning and growing and adjusting and adapting. Every single person that I work with changes how I approach things every single time. Um, so really, I joke with people and I say like I'm gonna sit on your living room floor barefoot and like just hang out with you and answer all of your questions and nerd out over information with you. And then when it gets down to the nitty gritty, whatever it is that you need, like I will be there. In whatever way you tell me, whether you need me in your face or you need me to just sit back in a corner and just be there, I don't have to be doing anything. Um, but that could be something for somebody. So I really don't have like a one size fits all approach to anything.
Yeah, and each and every person definitely isn't one size fits all. So, seeing what their needs are and what ways they like to be supported or need to be supported is so important.
Mm-hmm.
So, if you're working with someone prenatally, for instance, what would some of your like prenatal visits look like?
Definitely. So I generally try and fit in 2 to 3 meetings with somebody. It kind of depends on like where in their pregnancy that they hire me. I need one for sure. I would like to have one for sure. There have been times when I will just show up at the hospital and support somebody, and that's fine too. We figure it out together. Um, but I generally try to get to know the birthing person, and or their partners. Um, and their family and see exactly what it is that they need from me. Um, if they have questions about things along the way, I try and answer all of their questions. Either if they can think of them while I'm sitting there with them. I generally try and like make each meeting about 2 hours or so. Um, and that also depends on how many times we're meeting together. If we're only going to do it the once and we have time to sit together for a whole afternoon, then I do it that way too. Um, and I answer any questions that they have. I check in and see about how their pregnancy has been going, how they're feeling about things. Do they like their provider? Are they questioning whether or not they want to switch to a new provider? Do they like where they're giving birth? Do they have any questions about that? Or like, do they have any questions about if I've had experiences there or not? Try and answer all of those things. We go over comfort measures, and I try and get the partner or partners involved as much as they would like to be. Um, and yeah, it's really just kind of about meeting people where they're at and what they need,
Mhm.
um, and kind of going from there. Everything's I try and personalize everything as much as I can.
Awesome. Yeah, so kind of what I'm hearing is you are kind of coming to someone, having a conversation, and making sure that they're comfortable with their pregnancy,
Mhm.
where they're giving birth, who will be there to support them as they're giving birth, and helping to either answer any questions or calm any fears or help kind of redirect someone so that the people there that are around them and the place where they are is somewhere where they feel safe and comfortable.
And then a little bit later in the pregnancy, we do work on building a birth plan. I actually just had a webinar on building a birth plan where I talked about how the physical birth plan at the end of the session is not what is most important. I think what's most important is that people take the time to learn about all of their options. Um, and kind of decide like what is their ideal birth and how are we going to try and achieve that. And if that can't be exactly how we go about things, to make sure that they have enough information or that I'm there to support them and make sure that they get the information they need to make informed decisions so that they can still have the birth that they want, even if it has to go about, even if the route to get there is a little bit different than they thought.
Yeah, and I think that anyone else who works in the realm of birth would agree with you that the birth plan is an important step, but all of the education that you take in throughout developing your birth plan is just as important, if not more important.
Definitely.
We are diving into, okay, I think I want an epidural. What would be some of the pros and cons here? Or I think I want an unmedicated birth, or I think I want to stay at home until this length of time. Talking through those things and learning about them way before you need to do anything with them is just so incredibly helpful.
Definitely. And like there's so much information out there about everything, and there's so much to learn when you're pregnant and deciding to give birth. And like I'm a giant nerd. I've learned about all those things. I continue to learn about all of those things. And so I have a ton of that information just stored right and ready to go in my brain. And all that information, I have the sources for all of them too. So if people want to do the waiting around themselves, I am right there ready to be like, okay, here's 30 articles and 2 books, go for it. Like I have all that stuff just stored up in my head by this point.
Yeah, that way they don't have to deep dive into the depths of the internet until 3 a.m. They are able to just have a conversation with you.
Definitely.
Awesome. So when someone is giving birth, are you supporting people in the hospital, at home, birthing centers? What could that look like?
Definitely. So I try and remain open to pretty much supporting anybody, whatever. I've done home births, I've done hospital births. I haven't done a birth center birth yet. And I haven't had anybody before coronavirus. I haven't had anybody that has chosen to work with me and then not have me come to their birth. Usually I will do the prenatals with them. I will support them, either meet them at home or meet them at their place of birth and support them through that. Stay for a few hours postpartum and then check in with them. I'll go home and rest and everything, and then come back and check in with them during a certain time frame. I usually try and push it out to about 8 weeks, and we meet a few times in that time frame. But now with coronavirus, I didn't have any clients going into it, but I may have some now. And I'm trying to just kind of assess and meet people where they're at, like with everything. So I have had some people that have said, if I do want to meet you in person, is that something that we can work out? And we kind of go through the pros and cons and talk about like what have we been doing on each of our ends to socially distance, and do we have access to masks and everything that goes with that, just to try and make sure that we make the best decision possible and not put anybody in danger of getting sick. I have adapted how I work with clients virtually so that I'm fully prepared to do everything 100% online, including supporting you through the birth. So I'm all set to go whether we're meeting in person or virtually right now.
Yeah, coronavirus has kind of brought a whole new level of meeting people where they are.
Yeah. Definitely.
So anything else that you wanted to add on with supporting someone either postpartum, or what support might look like during surrogacy or adoption, or any of the other ways that you support someone?
Definitely. So I think everything, at least the way I do things, everything kind of stems from how I would support somebody in the traditional role of like a birth doula. Mm-hmm. And I kind of adapt it depending on the needs. So like if somebody's going through a miscarriage, they are still going to need physical support, definitely emotional support. They might need help wading through their options because miscarriages are also not one size fit all. And they might not have ever known anybody that has had a miscarriage, or they just didn't know it because we don't necessarily talk about it. Mm-hmm. And so they might not know that miscarriages can take hours, days, sometimes weeks, depending on what the reasoning is behind it. And they might not be prepared for that kind of transition. So I kind of have adapted everything from how I do work with birth clients and just kind of adjusted as needed. And then as far as postpartum stuff goes, that's a little different because I kind of do it hourly. Mm-hmm. And I do things, I can do overnight support with postpartum work. And it's really just like anything you need is what I'm about willing to do. Whether it be like physically taking care of you and your baby, depending, like, especially if you, like, for an example, if you've had a C-section, a lot of it is like taking care of the baby, making sure mom or the parent gets a lot of rest, bringing the baby from their bassinet or nursery to the parent and back and forth, and sometimes staying up to bottle feed them if we have decided that, like, the parent wants to get a full night's sleep that night. Mm-hmm. I also run errands with people. I run errands for people. I walk pets. Whatever's needed, basically. I'm just there to hang out and make sure that you feel supported and loved and you're getting all that healing that's really important afterwards. And it's the same thing with like a miscarriage or anything like that. I can still be your postpartum doula if you didn't have a live birth or if you had an abortion or a miscarriage or whatever it is. Because that's still postpartum. So
it is. And thinking about your body, it started to go through this huge change, and then all of a sudden there's still this giant drop in hormones and emotions that come to the surface and physical changes that take place, and you don't necessarily have the same support system that you might have following the birth of a live baby.
Definitely.
Yeah, I know for some people too, it's almost easier to talk to someone that they just met and be very real and just very deep with that person, knowing that there's no judgment and there's no added barriers that they might not have someone to talk to who is a close friend or family member.
Definitely. And I do express that to people also because I can be easier to talk about because I don't come in with any predisposed idea of like who you are. I don't have childhood memories with you. I won't bring any of that kind of like baggage into our relationship. I literally come with a fresh, clean slate and no judgment.
Yeah, and that's what I think so many of us, especially when we are kind of in those emotional throes of something, or we're just completely exhausted after several sleepless nights, we just need someone who's there and willing to say, like, here are the ways that I can help you. What do you need? Or what would be best now?
Definitely. And won't get mad if you yell at me because you're going through something. Yeah. I don't have any, like, I won't hold any resentments or anything like that because it's, like I said, it's not going to be like, you've never yelled at me like this before because, like, well, you haven't because you didn't know me before this, but I'm not going to care either way, so.
Right, so if that's what you need right now, go for it.
Yep.
Awesome. Well, any other ways that you support people or anything else that you wanted to mention?
I'm just trying to think. I do have a few notes just because I can get a little scatterbrained sometimes, and I take notes with my clients all the time. I always sit down with my notebook and go, I'm just doing this right here for me. Don't worry about it. I am currently working. I'm always working on like expanding my offering. So I have mentioned that like that as a full spectrum doula, people do stuff with fertility and antepartum, which is like if you have a high risk pregnancy, you would have somebody that is kind of like a postpartum doula that would come during your pregnancy to support you in the same ways a postpartum doula would. So like taking care of you physically, listening to you emotionally, making sure that if you need any help with errands or house chores or anything like that, it gets done if you're on bed rest. There are death doulas. There are, as I mentioned, like adoption and surrogacy doulas. Those aren't things that I have publicly been like, yes, I'm doing this now, because I'm still learning about them. But I'd like to just keep being able to diversify my options so that I can meet more people where they're at, and widen my ability to support the community in as many ways as possible.
Yeah, and I think that even just like doulas in general are just now starting to gain some traction, and more people are aware of what a doula is, why they might want to work with someone for their birth. So the idea of having a doula to help you during your fertility journey or during adoption, I think that's really new to people.
Definitely. And I know on my end, so my partner and I are pretty open about the fact that we are conceiving with a known donor. And I have been documenting our conception journey for the last few months. I did have a pregnancy, and I had a miscarriage in January, which I have learned from that experience firsthand, and it's definitely shaped how I do miscarriage support now, because I was one of those people that, even though I academically knew that like miscarriages weren't just like a cut and dry thing that happened in a set number of steps and then it was over. It's much different to know about something academically versus actually experiencing it yourself. And so I have a newfound, not respect, but like I've been there, and it's definitely changed how I approach things now. I forgot where I was going with that. I was saying that my partner and I have been very open about our conception journey, and so I'm really excited to share more about that as we gear up to start trying to conceive again, because there's not a whole lot of people who, when I try and find families that are like us, and like learn from their experience, like blog posts or whatever it is, I don't find a whole lot, and I would like to be that resource for other people. So that's something that is hopefully going to start happening more, and I'll be posting about it on my website.
Yeah, and it sounds like it's something that's definitely very close to your heart and very near and dear to you.
Yeah. I very, very proudly wear my heart on my sleeve. I actually pretty much have it tattooed on my arm.
On your sleeve.
So I'm a wide open book, and I just really love connecting with people. I feel like I kind of blur the line between personal and professional, because I really just think that connection is the most important thing, and loving on people is just like the heart of what I do.
So speaking of connection, what would be the best way for someone to reach out to you if they're interested in just working with you or having you work with them?
Sure. So I am on Facebook under Greater Love Doula Services. And I'm also on Instagram, the same thing, long handle, Greater Love Doula Services, all one word. And then my website is also greaterlovedoulaservices.com. And my email address is also greaterlovedoulaservices@gmail.com.
Perfect. So if someone is looking to work with you during their pregnancy, is there an ideal timeline where someone would contact you, or kind of a time cutoff for them to contact you?
As far as starting services, no. I've had people contact me as early as like 4 to 6 weeks. And that's totally fine. We just kind of have to space things out a little bit to make sure that we don't use up all of our time together in the beginning, I guess. And then as far as late services go, I have worked with clients, like I said, I would literally meet them for the first time while they're laying in the bed at the hospital. I generally would like to meet with people at least by 38 weeks, but I'm not going to say no. So.
And then what about someone who is looking for postpartum support, or they're planning an adoption, or they're planning IVF or things like that? Is there an ideal timeline?
Again, not really. Just trying to think what things we listed off. Postpartum, I have on my website that I would kind of like to meet with you one time before you have your baby, just so we can kind of get like a postpartum plan together and start identifying like those key factors, like who is your support system and what do you think you'll need now versus that way we have something to reflect on after you are actually in the postpartum period and kind of build off of, but it's not required by any means. And I haven't actually worked with anybody so far who has been a surrogate or who is planning on adopting. But I would imagine that as soon as you're going through the process, just having somebody to be a sounding board, I'm here. So
Fabulous. Well, anything else that you wanted to add on or talk about while we give anybody who's listening a chance to type in any questions or thoughts that they have?
I don't think so. This has been a very weird time for everything. And I know that I haven't been extremely active on social media, but don't let that fool anybody that I'm still here if somebody needs to reach out, either through my website or messaging me directly. So, yeah.
Fabulous. Well, thank you so much for sharing some of your time with us this afternoon. I definitely appreciate it. And it was great just hearing more about what doulas can and do, because it is so much more than providing some physical hands-on support during birth.
Definitely. Yeah, thanks for having me.
Well, thank you everyone for joining us. And if you have any questions after the fact, if you're listening to this recording, feel free to send either one of us a message or we'll leave a comment. We'd love to hear from you.
Yeah, thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.